Welcome back, everyone, to the Nauzecast. I'm your host, Nauze, and I have here today my good friend, Black Phoenix, author of Forged Through Resilience, a fantastic and nail-biting Avengers crossover with Harry Potter, and A New Reflection, a riveting time travel story focused on the Black and Potter families in the 70s. Phoenix is also currently working on another crossover to be published that will go back to the MCU in hitherto untold ways. Thank you for joining us today, Phoenix. How are you?
Not too bad. A little tired, but looks like it's gonna be a good day. What about you?
I'm good. Today is hot as hell, but yeah. So, how old were you, and how long did it take to you to get started with fanfiction as a reader?
Oh goodness. So I can tell you that my fan fiction account, my first one anyway, wasn't started up until I was already an adult. However, I had found fan fiction probably when I was 14 or so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It was a long time before I was able to create an account, but I was around 14 or so, and I had started off. I had just finished Inheritance by Christopher Paolini, and I had wanted. I was very. I love those books, but I was very disappointed by the ending, and so I went in, and I wanted to find something to sate my taste for a better ending, and
a more satisfying finish.
Yeah, and I kind of stumbled on to fanfiction.net, and before I knew it, I was addicted, because it's one of the best things about fanfiction is that you can change it in ways that most people would never think to change it.
Yeah.
And because of that, there are so many possibilities, and while most writers aren't ever as good as a professional writer, there have been stories in each fandom that I find are actually better than the original. And so, and that might sound unusual, but
it happens.
It happens in every fandom. There are stories that I feel are better written or better told stories than whatever the original canon was. And I think that that's always a joy to try and find in each fandom.
Okay. And it took a while for you to jump from a reader to starting writing your own fanfics. So what made you jump from that? From reader to writer?
I think it was the same thing that happens to most fanfiction writers, which is we're not seeing enough of the stories we want to read. I wasn't. There were stories that I was reading, and I felt I can do this better, or I can do this idea better, or
I want to see something.
Or I can. Do it.
I said you want to see something that no one has written yet. So.
Yeah, that no one has written yet, or at least
it was written poorly.
Yeah, written poorly, or just a different take on something. Because, for example, you mentioned this upcoming crossover, and I think the best Harry Marvel crossover that is in the vein of what I would like to do is Childhood Storm by Childhood Storm, and a kid from Jack, the author. And you've heard me rant and rave about how good that story is. And sequel, it's not that I think I could do it better than him, not at all. I think he's one of the best writers I've ever seen. However, I do think that I can do a different version, a different take on that idea, and I think I can do it well. And that's what inspired me. All writers are copycats. Never let them tell you different.
Well, the highest form of praise is plagiarism.
And it's funny because I actually started writing poetry when I was about 12 years old, because I'm a romantic at heart, and what better way to attract the ladies and the guys than by serenading them with your poetry. And and so I was writing poetry as I was 12, and I have notebooks from the time I was like 13 or 14 because I'd already read Percy Jackson by then, and I had notebooks, and I still have them somewhere, and they were just filled to the gills with stories that I had written out. So yeah, I was technically writing before I knew it was a thing.
That's awesome. When you did decide to do the jumping, to start writing, what was the thing you focused most at first, and what do you wish you knew at the time when you started, like that you know now?
I had when I first started writing. I started writing in the Aragon Inheritance Cycle, Hunger Games, and Percy Jackson fandoms, and this is with my old account. And when I was writing in those, I was a much younger person and I was a much more ignorant person. And it's not so much that there are things I wish I knew about writing, but I wish there were things that I had known about life, and like, I wasn't if you had met me those years ago, I wasn't a very good person. And I hate those stories now because now I look at them and I realize just how bad I was.
Everyone cringes at their own stories.
Right, and it's not like that it was bad writing, it's just that
you would have done things differently.
Yes, so much. For example, in my first Percy Jackson book, I give Percy a small harem, and like if I rewrote now, like I would never do that. That's horrible. Like, oh my god, I can't believe that. And then the same thing happened with my Hunger Games story. Which is funny because I was identified with PETA more than any other character in Hunger Games, which is really weird because I'm not as kind-hearted as him. But he is I guess he's like the character I would want to emulate in real life if I was so good. I would want to emulate PETA. He is an ideal I think we should all strive for. So I ended up giving him two female characters in a pairing. I'm just like, now I look back, I'm like, oh my god, it's such a horrible thing. I can't believe I did that.
I remember the first time I read book 3 of Hunger Games, I cried for like a whole weekend because of PETA and because of Katniss' turmoils, especially when when Prim died. Oh my god!
The Hunger spoilers.
10 years spoiler. Sorry. Snape killed Dumbledore. By the way,
the Hunger Games trilogy is so good. I love it so much. And it's funny because my favorite book is Catching Fire. I think it's the most. It has the weirdest pacing of all 3 books, I feel, but it's also the one that I think tells the most dynamic story, and without it being a war story, because Mockingjay is very much a war story, which neither of the first 2 books are, right? And I think in that capacity,
the second's much more a romance than anything else. I feel.
It's a romance, and it's a letter. It's almost, it reads like a love letter, and and I love it. And I like, and this is why I hate that movie so much. Like, as much as I love the book, I hate the movie because like there are things that happen in that book that I wish they had talked about more in the movie. Or at least even covered in the movie.
The only things I liked. Sorry, go.
Oh no, go ahead.
The only things I liked about the movies were the soundtracks. Honestly.
Soundtracks were great, and I think, and don't get me wrong, I think the casting for PETA and Hamish were amazing. I don't think anyone could have done it better than
Effie as well. He's wonderful.
Effie and President Snow, like
It's a fucking amazing cast. It's just the movie's boring. I want to kill myself watching.
I think. Oh, and don't get me started. I'm gonna go there. God,
yeah.
I laugh. I laugh, but I remember at the time. And Mags was great. The casting for Mags.
I don't remember who is it.
I don't remember her name either, but she was this wonderful old lady, and I remember watching Mags on screen and just thinking, she is the grandmother that we all wish we had, but no one deserves. And I remember in the books, Haymitch kind of alludes to the idea that that Mags kind of helped raise Finnick post the games, and so like there's just this extra meaning to when she dies because it's very much a mother's sacrifice for her son.
Yeah.
Right. And it reads and plays out differently in books than it does in the movie because in the movie you don't get that connection. You don't see that.
She died. Oh, bad. Too bad.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. But in the books, it's like that she was like his mother. She took care of him post the games. Like this is, and it really what I really like about their relationship is it kind of shows you what Haymitch and Katniss and Peter's relationship could have been like years down the line, in a world where the rebellion never happens, because it's very much this idea that the mentor kind of becomes a lifeline for younger generations.
Yes.
And I really like it. There's a series of fan fictions, and I can't remember the name for the life of me. And it's all about the District 2 victors and this kind of family that they've built around each other and how they protect each other and love each other. And just kind of like their whole, from right before the 74th Hunger Games and through the war. And it's just kind of like told from their point of view. And it's just so good because it really kind of draws attention to this idea, this relationship between mentor and, this connection between being a mentor and also like being a parent and a guide and a friend for someone who's just been through something horribly traumatic, right? Like, I think that's something we all kind of forget is the Hunger Games are horribly traumatic events.
Yeah. We take it with, like, we are very desensitized about it, but it's horrible. Same for Harry Potter.
Yeah. No, for sure. Like, the things that happen in Harry Potter, like, there are some horrible things that happen in this book. But we kind of brush it off because we don't really realize. Like, I think I was both fortunate and unfortunate that I didn't read Harry Potter until I was an adult.
Wow.
So because of that, I had, from the beginning, like, when I read chapter 1, I can't remember, I think it's like chapter 1 or chapter 2 of the first book, and I see Albus dropping this child off in front of someone's house, and, like, Minerva's like, no, these are the worst muggles you could imagine, like, why would you do this? Like, this is a horrible idea. And, like, for me, as an adult reading that, I was horrified.
Yeah.
So I never liked Albus Dumbledore's character.
Explains how you use him whenever you do write him.
Right, and, like, I don't think he's a bad character. I don't even think he's a bad person.
You just don't like him as a person.
Yeah, like, I think Albus is the idea. Albus is the image personified of power corrupts. Because it's not that even that he's a bad person or that he's been corrupted into a bad person, but he has so much power that he sees the forest but misses the trees.
Yep.
Right. And I think one of the things we talked about in this new crossover is how someone like the Ancient One, she sees the whole forest, but she also sees the trees. But Albus, he has so much wisdom and so much age that he's still just seeing the forest, and he's missing the trees, he's missing the individual, right? Or even if he sees the individual, he
doesn't care much because he needs the forest to grow. Basically.
Right, and we see this happen in book 5 when he says, I knew,
you're going to face a horrible future.
That he was going to face a horrible childhood and, horrible life. But it's like, and I'm sure that in that moment Albus was very contrite and it hurt, but it's still like, this is a child you're doing this for. To like, Harry is a child,
Yeah.
And no child should ever be put in that position. So yeah.
Yeah. That
Sorry,
was
my little rant.
that was a bit of a big segue in a different tangent, but okay. Let's go back to it. Has any of your professional or academic experience helped you in any way as far as writing goes?
I would actually say it's the opposite. My drive to write well, because I've always been a big reader, and so I'm very fortunate to have a very wide vocabulary. Doesn't seem like it all the time, but I do. And I like to write, and I've always liked to write things, stories and articles and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so I find that writing and fan fiction actually helped me a lot with my academic writing.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, believe it or not. Especially because I started writing before I went into college.
Uh-huh.
And by the time I went to university, I knew how to craft a paragraph. I knew where do commas go, where do periods go, when's the best use for like a semicolon or a colon, like all these little things. Like I already knew going into university, which was very nice when you could write 10-page essays.
True. That also helped me a lot as well. Although it's a bit different with Portuguese, like we have different rules, but usually it's the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. Because here's the thing with fan fiction: when you write a 5,000-6,000 word chapter, that's 10 pages, single space, easy.
You basically don't even notice.
You don't notice. So when you're writing a paper, it's very easy to get 10 pages double space because it's like, oh, I've done this before. This is nothing.
Yeah.
So
it sure softens the blow.
It softens the blow, for sure.
What is your process for defining what is a good enough idea to keep or not? And how do you come up with new ideas? Do you have a vault of ideas that you keep?
Right. I have a giant Google Drive folder, just filled to the brim with story ideas I would like to do one day or not. And I find, so one of the first things I look at is, has it been done before?
Mm-hmm.
Or a similar idea been done before? And has it been done well? For example,
and how,
Slytherin
actually, as well.
And how has it been done? Because, for example, I wouldn't want to write a long Slytherin Harry fic because I feel that it's been done by this Sinister Man. It's been done by ACI 100, and it's been done by Sectimus Prince, and all three of them have done it well in varying capacities, right? And I feel like I have nothing more to add to that genre, right? To that subset of fan fiction. I don't have anything to add to that.
That's not really true, but I get why you'd say, because everyone has a unique point of view of something. So anything you write would eventually become different enough. But I understand why you'd say that, because
I don't want to write.
They already explored a lot, so
they've explored a lot, and so I feel like if I were to go that route, there's being a copycat, and then there's kind of what's the last thing I want to. Yeah, right. And then there's being inspired, and I would rather be inspired than just be a plain up copycat. The problem is when you're writing something like Slytherin Harry fic, there are a lot of things that have already been covered.
Yeah.
And now, don't get me wrong, I do have an idea for, I think, something that could work with Slytherin Harry, because I think one thing that hasn't been talked about is this idea that I think you can write a Slytherin Harry or a Wrong Boy Who Lives story without making his parents or his family seem like buttholes.
Yeah.
I feel that there is a way that you can write a story where Harry goes in a Slytherin, and it's not, man, his family are horrible people.
There's an old one that I loved that does that fairly well, but it's completely AU, I think it's called.
Yeah.
I think it's called Frater Culus. And nice. It's basically he's 3 older than his older brother. Than his younger brother, and the younger brother is the boy who lived. So he goes to Slytherin to basically set the field to prepare for the war that's coming, to help his brother and his family out. So it's completely different than the usual wrong boy who lived fix with Slytherin and Harry.
Yeah, and I think so. I mean, in general, I guess to decide what's a good idea to keep, a lot of it comes down to who's done it, where's it been done before, how's it been done. Is the trope overwritten? And I think, for example, I would like to write and I think you know this, I want to write a triad fic. And one of the things I was mulling over in my head is the fact that there isn't a complete triad fic with the specific characters I want to use. There isn't one that has been completed. There's one that's been done really, really well.
Which one?
But it was never completed. I want to say it's Adversity Breeds Excellence.
Oh, yes. It's
one of
it's Fleur and Tonks.
Greatest. Yeah, it's one of the greatest stories that I've ever read, and I've enjoyed it so much.
Yeah, it's really good.
It was never done. It was never completed, and I think that there is a route where you can write Harry Fleur Tonks and it doesn't feel contrived, and so I feel like I have a good path laid forward for me. That's for how to come up with ideas. A lot of it is inspiration, right? A lot of it is you read something that's like, oh, I could do this better, or ooh, I haven't seen this done yet.
I want to do this.
For example, there's a Star Wars Harry Potter crossover that I've been meaning to kind of look at and do, and it's way down the road for sure. If I ever get around to it, that's something I feel like, oh, I haven't seen it done this way. I think it would be really good. I'm going to keep this in my back pocket. And then there's a lot of ideas where okay, this won't make a good long story, but maybe this might be a good short story or a good one shot. And so I have a little folder for those too. I might do these as one shots or short stories another one day because I feel like they'd be better in this format than in a longer story.
I see. Okay, makes sense. Do you brainstorm? And how many hours do you spend doing that? If you do that. If you do that.
So once I come up with an idea, I start with either a fic. I either start with a document with either an outline or just a list of ideas of things I would like to hit or cover in a story.
Oh, sorry to cut you, because I just thought of something. Do you outline or are you a discovery writer? And for those who don't know, can you explain to the audience, please? An
outliner is exactly what it sounds like. Someone writes out an outline and uses that to guide their story. Then there's a discovery writer where you kind of come in with a general idea of knowing what you want to do, but then kind of leaving everything to kind of come as it comes. And I would say I'm actually a mix of the two. For example, I have outlined and plotted out all of a new reflection, and I have I've plotted it all out. I know how it's going to end. I know everything, and I know what's going to happen in each chapter. But even in my first chapter, in chapter 8, in this most recent chapter, I finished writing the chapter, and I started chapter 9, and it's in a completely different spot than what I had originally planned for chapter 9, right? So I like having an outline for like a guide. However, I don't believe that one should be stringently held into that.
Sure.
Like you shouldn't. Like you should allow for
It's a
flexibility.
guide, not a.
It's a guide,
a rule book.
I think it's good to have an outline. It's a good way to like have a general list of ideas and stuff that you want to cover in your story and scenes that you want to cover. For example, like a new reflection.
Mm-hmm.
The basis for almost the entire story is a scene that is only going to happen in the epilogue. Right? Like
Rosa had that
like
same thing.
I came into that story knowing, okay, this is how this story is going to end, and this is the scene it's going to end with, and everything else is just kind of like lead up, right? And in that you have to craft a good story, which is very difficult. And if anyone tells you different, they're an idiot. But yeah, so.
What is your writing process, and how many hours do you actually spend writing instead of just thinking or plotting?
Oh God, I actually, in comparison to the plotting and brainstorming, I spend very little time writing. As you know, I write in bursts, and kind of come and go. And you've seen me do this before. I can hit out a 6,000-7,000 word chapter.
Yeah.
And I can hit it out in like 6 or 7 hours, and it's done. And it's like, okay. And probably for like a week or two before that, I was thinking, okay, how do I want to do this? How do I want to do that? I might not even be writing anything down, but I'm thinking about all these things I want to do. And then when the day comes, I'm like, something will kind of hit me, and I'll just be like, da, 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 da. Before you know it, the chapter's done. And I don't know how everyone else does it, but that's always how it's always been for me. I just kind of the amount of time I actually spend writing is very little in comparison to everything else.
But it's still substantial if you think about it.
Yeah, it's substantial. It's more often than not, it's a full day's work.
Yeah, and it's tiring as well.
Oh, it can be. Although this happened one time. I wrote 8,000 words.
Jesus.
Right? In like the course of like 12 hours. I slept for 6 hours.
My hands would have fallen over by then. I write 2K words and they burn.
It gets worse. It gets worse. I slept for 6 hours and I wrote another 6,000 word chapter like right after. Like it was one of those moments where I was on a roll and I wasn't going to be stopped. And
you were on the zone.
I was in the zone, and when you're in the zone, it's like, and it's where we say in the zone. Like, it's a real thing. It's like you've shut everything else out. Everything else is not important. The only thing important is that document in front of you, and you've kind of hit this place where words can't stop coming. And before you know it, you've written more than you can imagine. And it's exhausting. Yeah. It's very exhausting, but it's also one of the best feelings. So it's also one of the best feelings to look at it when it's done and say, I did this. This was me. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Do you usually play some songs while writing?
Oh, yes. Music is a necessity. If for no other reason, it tunes everything else out. Yeah. I like a lot of instrumental music. I like a lot of not EDM, but like, I guess it's EDM. I don't know. I like a lot of lo-fi music.
Right? Yeah, I love lo-fi. Oh my god, it's so good.
I don't like a lot of lyrical songs. I mean, don't get me wrong. I have lots of them,
but not while writing.
While writing, I prefer to kind of just hit this area where the only thing in my brain is my thoughts and the music of the universe. It's kind of like, and just kind of
the zone, basically. That's
the zone, right?
How it's described.
Oh, yeah.
How many hours do you spend researching, and what do you consider research worthy?
Oh no, research is probably the biggest consumption of time.
Oh.
I think I couldn't even quantify how many hours because well over 40 a week that I can spend on it. And I consider everything research worthy. Like one of the things about, especially when you're writing in a fandom like Harry Potter, one of the things is world building, right? Like this is, a lot of what J.K. Rowling gives us in the books is a lot of framework, right?
Yeah.
So that we kind of have a good idea of what the world of Harry Potter looks like, but it's not filled in, and there's a lot of things that need filling in.
And you can
so
tie a lot of it.
Yeah, right. There's a lot of things that the writer has to do by themselves, and especially like a new reflection is in AU, because we know that there are no lordships in Harry Potter. We know that there are a lot of things in that story that just don't bear weight in the actual canon. And so, but you still want to get as much right as you can. So you're always doing research on things to make the world feel real, make it feel immersive. And, so I'm always, research is one of the biggest things I'm always doing. Especially more so for the two crossovers I'm working on, because
the world is huge, much huger than
the world is either much bigger or you have thrown someone into a whole new experience, and so there's a lot of things that you need to cover.
Yeah, and figure out like butterfly effects as well. Like how does one person getting stuck in a completely different world will change the preset word. So yeah. You've co-written before with someone else. Can you tell us how that experience was and the challenge that comes with that dynamic?
Both Venerance and I have very busy lives, so the writing is always very slow, and more often than not, it's kind of a new chapter comes along when the inspiration hits the two of us at the right time, and we just happen to have some spare time. And even then, we always write at different times, because what might happen, and this has happened for all of our chapters, is I might write pretty much the bare bones of the whole chapter, and then Venerance will come in behind me and do a lot of fill up and a lot of patching and editing and putting things here, or rewriting entire scenes to make it flow better, right? And the vice versa has happened. He's written the bare bones of the chapter, and I've gone in behind him and added my own, little flavoring to it.
Yeah.
And it's complex and frustrating because we're so busy that there's not always time to work on it, and which is rough when the mood hits and you're like, oh, I want to work on the story. And it's like, oh, maybe not the best time, and right, and then but it's also a lot of fun. Like, I've enjoyed working with Venerant so much, and I'm going to be working. You've seen you saw the server merger on Discord. I'm going to be working with Secondus Prince on a few stories, and we have a few stories plotted out and everything, and it's going to be so much fun. We have so many good ideas, and I think that it'll be fun to work together because we both love these fandoms so much. Not just Harry Potter, some of the other ones we'll be working in. I can. Hopefully, they don't kill me for this for revealing this. We have a Percy Jackson fic plan.
Oh.
And we also have and we also have a Percy Jackson Frozen crossover.
Frozen
in the works.
How?
Yeah, right. Not something you would think would work, but we
interesting.
I
love Percy Jackson, but it's so rare to find good Percy Jackson fics.
We got hit by a piece of inspiration, and we just kind of ran with it. And then the same thing for me and Apples. We're working on something together. Right. And that it's slow going because both of us are super busy people. But that's also been like fun to just the conversations that Apples and I have had about this story, like just talking about it is so much fun.
What fandom that one? I'm assuming
we can spend.
What fandom for Apples?
When we say Percy Jackson.
Ooh, yeah. Ooh, that's interesting. Never saw Percy Jackson from Apples.
Right, Apples wanted to go into that kind of stuff, and so we're like, and so we just kind of went to it, and it was right, and and we've got so many things planned for that because that's a complete AU kind of thing. It's gonna be fun. It's been great.
Sounds amazing. You've been talking about crossovers and stuff. You've been writing crossovers for almost 2 years now, and or more, I don't know. I'm not sure. And you're starting a new one. Do you think it's more or less complex to focus on just one fandom? And how do you choose which one you want to focus mostly on?
So that's actually a more complicated question than you might imagine.
Oh, I'm sure it's very complicated.
So there are typically two types of crossovers. There's the type of crossover where both universes, or multiple, depending on what you choose to do with it, all exist in one shared universe, right? There's that kind of crossover,
which is usually a clusterfuck.
Yeah, it's a huge mess, but it can be so rewarding.
Yes, for sure.
Out of the Storm, for example, is this amazing, just mesh of worlds, and it's easily one of the most amazing experiences I've ever been on, and I will continue to praise Tyler's from the day I die, because that story and its sequel are just so good. That said, then there's the other kind of crossover, and that's kind of what Force the Resilience was, which was where you take what I call a plucky character. A plucky character is a character that you can just pull out from the fandom, from their world, and you can throw.
In most cases, it's the MC.
Most cases, it's the MC, and you can throw them into any other universe.
Which is my favorite kind of crossovers.
Right? Force Resilience, I literally pulled Harry out of the Harry Potter universe, and I threw him into the MCU just to see what would happen. And that's what Venerance and I did, and that's a lot of fun. And
I miss it so much.
And so the answer to the second question really depends on which type of crossover you're writing. If you're writing a crossover where you just take a character and pluck them out of one and throw them into the other, then you can kind of just focus on that second fandom, right? Because almost all your time is spent in that world and building and developing that world, and how your main character's appearance in that world adapts to it and changes things and interacts with any world.
Basically, all you have to care about the previous one is background story for the main character.
Right. I think it's not a great story, but I'll say like Wizard Rune Master did those by Plums, where they plucked Harry Potter and threw him into like the World of Warcraft series, if I recall correctly.
Never read them.
And then I'm not going to recommend it because there's a lot of issues with it. It's also very explicit, so there's that. But like that was one take on it, and then another one that I really liked was Harry Potter Death. That took Harry and took him from Harry Potter and threw him in the Mass Effect universe, and that was a lot of fun. Oh my god!
That sounds very odd, but very interesting.
It's odd, and it's not something you think would work, but it does. And part of that comes from the fact that characters like Harry Potter and Percy Jackson are kind of universal characters, right? You can take them and put them in and the same thing is true with Naruto and this one. I mean, Naruto crossovers. I don't like Naruto, but me neither. One of the reasons why he has so many Naruto crossovers is because
He's easy to play with, basically.
He's easy to play with. You can take him and put him into any situation, and he's going to adapt. He's going to survive. Same is true with Harry Potter, and same is true with Percy. Like, these are characters that you can just take from any... You can take from them and throw them wherever you want, and 9 times out of 10, it's going to work because of the characters that they are and how they are, and how they can adapt and how they can, and the decisions that they're going to make are just so. I think
they are reliably obvious in how they think, so you always know what you get, unless you want to go for something completely different. But still,
for sure. And then the other one is but for the larger crossovers where you are literally making a shared universe. I find that it is definitely more complex. However, I think it's more fun. The world building alone is so immense. This latest project that I'm working on, I've been working on for like nearly a year, if not more, and it's been something that I constantly bring up because part of the reason it took so long to kind of really get into the meat and bones.
It's massive.
It's massive. This is a massive universe, and like Harry Potter is a small universe, but it's also not.
It's very rich by the short amount of short.
Yeah, it's very very dense.
Yeah.
For its size, and you can to say that you have the Harry Potter universe and the Marvel universe, not even the MCU, which kind of restricts what you're working with. But no, you're going to just put it all in this one massive shared universe. And it's like, there is so much groundwork that has to be done for it to work. And it's been one of the funnest experiences of my time. I think been the story because I enjoy it.
One of the reasons I think they are so much harder than regular fandoms, single fandoms, it's because you can't assume people will know the other fandoms. So you kind of have to showcase some or explain some of the
there's a lot of
things inside each fandom.
Yeah, there's a lot of groundwork that needs to be done.
So yeah,
especially if you're like me, and I'm not even going for something as simple as like the Avengers. In my big 2 universe crossover, I'm going for the idea for working with like mutants and stuff, and that adds a whole layer of complexity to who Harry's character is and what he has to deal with growing up. And as you know, that story starts off with a really tragic incident.
Yeah.
And like, so you have this young kid who's already going in with a lot of trauma. And now he's thrust into this wider universe that has been spurred on by his trauma and by the traumatic event. And now he's got to live in it. And as Harry Potter does, the world kind of bends and twists when he's around. He draws trouble like a magnet.
Of course.
And so that's been really fun to play with.
For sure.
And then I think one of the most fun things for me is that putting Harry into a wider Marvel universe also allows me to build parental relationships with different characters that just aren't really available to me in the Harry Potter universe, because at the point where I started the story, Remus is still off on the run. Sirius is still in prison. So Harry has just gone through this really traumatic event,
and he has no one.
And if it was in canon, he wouldn't have no one to rely on. But in my story, I can give him people to rely on. One of the things that me and Menodor were talking about the other day, a while back, was just how different Charles Xavier is to Dumbledore. And why that allows Charles Xavier to be a better mentor / father figure for someone like Harry, who's been through so much. And who better than a psychologist, because it's one of Charles's areas of expertise. Who better than a psychologist to kind of help him deal with some of the trauma that he's been through.
Charles Xavier is a psychologist in the kennel. Yes. Oh, I had no idea.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
It was his field of study because of
makes sense,
right? Like it was great. It's one of the greatest things about Charles Xavier is that he is uniquely suited to helping people deal with their trauma and their issues better than almost anyone in Marvel canon, and except for maybe like the ancient one in the MCU, and just wonderfully adept at plucking out people's problems and saying, here's a way forward, which is what someone like Harry needs. He needs,
especially after what happened.
Right, and especially after what he goes through.
Oh my god.
He needs a special hand, and it's something that no one at Hogwarts can give him.
Most definitely not Dumbledore.
Right, exactly. And so, in a way, his trauma has opened up a path for a better life.
Which sucks to imagine.
Like, it's horrible.
Yeah.
But I would say there's a silver lining.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
To how bad the things start off.
For sure. Time travel is we talked about the crossovers, and the other fanfics you're writing is time travel, and I know you love that trope. So it's a very complex genre, because of the butterfly effect and several paradoxes and many things that can go wrong in a time travel. In your opinion, which are the aspects one should look out for when you're writing that sort of trope? And what do you think makes it for a good time travel story? And what is your favorite one?
So, another complicated question. I love it. There are two types of time travel. There's the one that you take to fix someone else's time travel mess up.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the one that you take to fix something, to change something in the past, right? You either go in the past to change something, right, from how it wasn't originally, or you go back to fix someone else's mistake, someone else's time travel mistake, right? As to say, how do they say? To make the timeline right, right?
Okay.
Right? So those are the two kind of ways you go. In one of those, you have to worry more about the butterfly effects and the paradoxes. And that's if you're going back to fix someone else's mistake. The thing is the whole point of time travel, and the only reason I feel it should be used, is to change past events.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're just going to throw someone into a past event, but you're not going to have them change anything,
it's annoying. At least for me.
Then what's the point of having them there?
Yeah.
Right? There's no need for them to be there. In fact, you could take them out and just tell that story, and it'd be a better story because it would not have the complexities of time travel attached to it. And this is one of the things that happens with A New Reflection. Harry gets thrown into the past, and there's no way back.
Mm-hmm.
He's stuck there. And so the only logical thing for him to do is to build a life for himself and to do what he can to prevent some of the bad things that happened in his original timeline. Because there's no going back, right? So the only way is forward.
Yep.
Right? Yeah. As for what makes a good time travel story, basically, my preferred ones are the ones that ignore paradoxes.
Mm-hmm.
Because, there's really not a need for them, because the whole thing with the paradox is saying that
time is fixed.
Yeah, right. Is that time is fixed, and that's kind of
boring.
It's boring, and it's also kind of stupid if you think about it in the long run. If you're gonna write, it's kind of
closed loop. There's no need to do something because it's already being done. So why do it? Why do you do it in the first place? It's the
only place where I think the closed loop was done quite well is not even in the story; it's in the movie. Was in the Avengers
Endgame
last movie. in Endgame was, like, yes, it was a closed loop, but they were still able to change time. They were still able to fix it, right? Like, and it was done in a way that didn't seem too contrived, which I appreciate. And so, like, better than that, like, I love Back to the Future trilogy. I love them, but it's also like, it's
dumb,
kind of stupid. That you would expect for someone to go back in the past and not change anything, and everything has to be like, that's not how life works, right? And so I think one of the so there. That's my answer. It's complicated.
And your favorite?
My favorite, I have so many, and they're all by, hilariously enough, all except like one or two are by Apple Apples. Apple Apples is easily the best time travel writer, I think, in all of fan fiction.
I love their stories.
I have yet to see anyone who does it better than they do. Then the other one that isn't there is probably Passageways.
The Bellatrix one, I think.
Yeah, because I think it plays off the idea of the paradox really well.
Yeah, I love that one. I wish it was completed, I think.
Because you have a universe that is literally, you get to watch Harry Potter's canon universe literally change as the past is changed. And as more things in the past change, more things in the future change. And it's really good.
It's really nice.
Like, I love, and I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, but it's one of my favorite stories.
I quite like that one as well. Speaking of favorite things, which are your favorite characters and parents, and why? And what makes you love them?
Specifically in the Harry Potter universe, or like
in general? Pick like two of each, maybe.
Okay, I'll just hit a few. Peeta is my favorite Hunger Games character. He is. Don't get me wrong, I love Katniss, and I love Haymitch. Haymitch is so good.
I love Haymitch.
I think Haymitch is one of my favorite supporting characters ever written, because he's very
cynical, hilarious.
He's cynical. He's everything. He is everything that a mentor character who's been through trauma kind of should be like, right? Like one of the things that I love about him is the realism of his trauma.
Yeah.
And the things he's gone through, right? Having him being an alcoholic was one of the best story choices, I think, for his character. Because, like, it adds this realism in this layer.
That he didn't come out unscathed.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like, and it would have been one thing for him to come out with, like, scars or one thing. But it's a whole nother to kind of really layer in that mental trauma that he went through and have him come out as an alcoholic after everything that happens to him and his family and be like, this is a flawed character, this is a flawed man, but he's still such a good man, right? Like, and that's one of the reasons why I love him. And then, of course, I love Peeta. Peeta is just, and I didn't mention this earlier, he's an ideal, which we should all strive towards, his character is one of the best, he has one of the best character arcs in fiction, and I don't think anyone can tell me different. And me agree. I have a shirt that says, I may be wrong, but I doubt it. And that's the statement I'm going to flag here. Let me Aragon. Oh my god. Who doesn't love the teenage boy with the dragon? Like, as a guy and as someone who read that as a young kid, like, my dreams were filled with flying dragons.
Yeah, Aragon. Me too.
And he was a vessel for all my childhood dreams, and I loved his character so much, and the growth that he grows through in the last 2 books.
It's amazing.
The Inheritance.
I must have reread the last 2 books so many times.
It's funny, I love Eldest because it's the one that kind of plays into the romance the most. But I think one of the best scenes that ever happened was Aragon and Arya outside of Gras Leona, and they're kind of like drunken night together. And I say that and it sounds like they did something horrible, but no, they go and they're drinking and having fun, and you get to see the intimacy of their friendship.
Yep.
And like, that is, especially because Arya is such a withdrawn character and reserved character. Like, to see them in that moment was one of my favorite times reading a book as a kid, was seeing them in that moment and the openness and the intimacy of that scene, which is so good. And it's only replicated later when there's in a totally different context when with the sharing of names.
Yeah.
And it's like,
and then you don't get the satisfying ending.
right.
Yeah, I
but
get it.
I hope that Carlini will return to the series. We will get.
He started writing something else, if I recall correctly.
Did he write In a Sea of Stars, which is a really good book. I recommend it to everyone. It's a sci-fi book, but it's really good.
No, I mean inside Alagaeja's universe. I remember seeing a tweet or something that he started writing again, but I don't remember exactly what was it.
I must have missed that.
I think it's about Angela.
Oh yes, the witch, the worm, and the something. This could yes.
Yeah.
And then let me think. What else? Harry Potter. Harry, of course, because he's an orphan child who's been through so much, and yet is one of the strongest characters in all of fiction. And I love, especially here's the thing, he's a child. And I think sometimes it's
and an abused and traumatized child as well. Even from 11 years old.
Yeah, even from before that, he was abused by the Dursleys, and he's been through so much, and yet he's such a strong character. And people say, "Oh no, he shouldn't have been Gryffindor." No, yes, he should have. He was the inner strength and bravery and nobility inherent in his character is one of the everyone's like, "Oh, he's a copycat of all these earlier heroes." Yeah, in a way, sure, he's an orphan, but that's about it. There's this inner strength. What sets him apart is the inner strength at the age of 11. At the age of 11, to face a man who
killed his
own parents, and the strength of inner character that it would take to. I could never do what Harry did, even in his universe. I could never do that. Harry is a uniquely strong character of both heart and mind, and he is also an inspiration for us all, I feel, and he should also be looked up to because he is one of the greatest characters to ever be done, and for all of J.K. Rowling's issues, and she's got a doozy of them. Writing Harry Potter the way she did, writing Harry's character the way she did is not one of them. Also from that series, I also love Luna, who is a rock for all of Harry's issues and all the lack of support he gets. And don't get me wrong, I love Hermione and Ron. They're great friends. They're the best of friends. Luna provides this rock and this strength that allows him to grieve over Sirius in a way that no one else can quite do, because no one quite understands Harry the way Luna does. And this is why I was sorely disappointed that she was not the final pairing. Because it was
she's my OTP.
She was a better friend, and she also played a better girlfriend role in the later two books than any other character. I get the draw of Ginny and Hermione and Harmony. Harmony, that's what it is. And Harmony, I get it. And I was one of those people who thought that Hermione was going to be the pairing because it made sense. But there is a strength in Luna's character that matches so well with Harry. Because for as strong as a character as he is, for as much lifting up of the world as he does for everyone else, there's no one that really kind of holds him up. At least going in towards later books, and having someone like Luna that allowed him to process his grief and allowed him to move forward. It's no shame. There's no surprise that one of his children is named after, because one of the things I love is that she's the only living character that one of his children is named after, and it's she did him a greater service in the last two books than a lot of characters in the entire series, and it is they work. They would have worked as a couple so well. Just there's a bonding there that I don't think that would have set up a nice foundation for something more that I don't think anyone else could have met.
For sure. Do you plan on writing original fiction in the future?
Oh man, I would love nothing more. Let me start with that. I would love nothing more. However, what I do want to do first is finish all my current fan fiction stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because not just what I have out now, but what I'm planning to write. Because I feel that is a service I owe to the fandom, because they are stories that make the fandom richer and more complex and expand the fandom in hopefully new ways. And I feel, and there's stories I want to tell. First and foremost, I'm a storyteller. And that's what I always say is I am a storyteller. Before I'm a writer, before I'm a reader, I am a storyteller.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to tell these stories. And there are stories I feel deserve to be told, and I would like to tell them and then tell my own stories. However, as for original fiction, one day, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
it is, it's something I would love to do. And I think I could do it. But we'll see. It's not an end all. Like, it's like one of those bucket list kind of things. I would like to write a book before I die, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's okay if I don't. And it's like,
it's not your end goal.
It's not even that it's not my end goal. It's just I'm not going to stick everything on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I wish I had that drive to do so, but I don't. And I'm not going to
force yourself.
Force it, right?
Mm-hmm. So what do you wish there was more of as far as tropes and characters or pairings?
More well-written Harry Luna.
Yeah,
my
me too.
God.
I wish. Oh my god.
More well-written Percy Annabeth.
Just more well-written Percy Jackson in general and crossovers.
For sure, but like the reason I specifically go for that one is that
people love doing betrayals.
One of my biggest problems with Percy Jackson and Perkabeth in particular is that I feel that no one, except for in like one story, which is like a complete AU that takes place in the Roman era, in the Roman Empire.
Ooh.
Like aside from that, like it's a Tale of Golden Leaves or something. I forget what the title is. A Crown of Golden Leaves or something. And besides that one story, no one has quite written Perkabeth. No one has written Perkabeth anywhere close to the quality with which Riordan has done it.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things, like, here's the thing, like, when it comes to fandoms, I feel like the pairings that we don't get to see in canon are the ones that are best explored in fanfiction. Because it's a whole new outlet, and that's why I prefer not to read Hinny stuff, because it's like, I have Hinny in canon, and I'm okay, and I'm happy with what J.K. Rowling gave me.
Mm-hmm.
I want something else in my fanfiction. Like, it's not that I think Hinny's a bad idea, it's just I want
You're satisfied already.
I'm satisfied with what I got in canon. I want more, which is ironically completely different from what happens in the Inheritance cycle, where we don't get that. I want more Aragon Arya. I want more Aragon Arya because this is obviously the pairing that should have been. Yep. I want more. As far as tropes, I don't know. My problem, my thing is so many have been written so poorly.
You kind of
here's one. We were talking about.
Sure.
Here's one. We were talking about this on the Harry Gaffney server, and me and Vainglorious Hound, the author, and we've kind of been looking at this, and we might actually do this one day. Writing a Harry Potter universe story where there's an actual aristocracy and doing it well, like not making it so stupid as it is in so many fanfiction, including my own. Like, it's one of my biggest regrets was including that in my own in the new reflection. Like, we want to do a legitimate, like, this is how a magical aristocracy could look like and work, and we want to do it this is one. So this is something that we've been talking about back and forth for months.
Oh,
So yeah,
sounds
that is
interesting.
definitely, and that's one of the things like we talked about. Like when one of the things that draws you to write stories is like, I haven't seen this done well yet, so I want to do it better.
Yep.
Right. And that's one where like we haven't seen the lordship or the aristocracy thing done right. Let's do it better.
Yep. I think the best one, like by far, and even that part can get quite boring, is on ITT, like the political stuff, because
for sure
it's annoying. Lordship and all the things, it's so boring.
The other problem inherent with that trope is that Harry in canon is a very young person
and has no idea what the fuck is going on.
Like, exactly, right? Like the politics gets so convoluted and it's made stupid by the fact that Harry is 13, 14, 15, maybe 17 or 18. Like he's just so young. It's like, this is stupid because no real person
would
follow this.
Yeah.
Like right. So so it's like I would like to see better writing of an aristocracy joke, and I might just have to do it myself. God,
it's gonna be hard.
Oh, for sure. The world building that would have to be done is like huge.
Yep, for sure. Who has helped you most with your writing career, and who is your biggest inspiration, both in the fanfiction world and the traditional literature? Jesus Christ, I can't say that word.
So, aside from fanfiction, my biggest strength is probably writing poetry. And
sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
Oh, I said so. One of my biggest strengths outside of writing fanfiction is writing poetry.
Poetry.
And so I fell in love with Shakespeare sonnets when I was in school, and I fell in love with Dickinson and Frost when I was in school. And it's funny because I do a lot of freestyle poetry. Like I don't do rhyming poetry, and so all three of them either have poems that rhyme or do something in certain schemes that I just don't adhere to. But like my whole draw to poetry is from Robert Frost, Emily Dickinson, and William Shakespeare, and just this love for what poetry can do comes from them. So, yeah.
Interesting. That's surprising.
And then for, I would say, as for writing, I was very fortunate. I have, for all the problems I have in my family, I was very fortunate that there are a lot of writers in my family.
Interesting.
And we're always pushing each other to write more. Granted, no one's published or anything, but like we have a lot of like hobbyist writers in our family. And my grandfather, who passed away years ago, he was also a wonderful poet, and reading his writing helped me a lot, which is interesting because he wrote in Spanish, and I write almost only in English because it's easier for me. But his poetry was something that really set me on my way too.
Start your writing. That's awesome. I had no idea. And in fanfiction, do you have anyone?
Apples.
Yeah, I figured it would be that.
As anyone who knows me is well aware, Apples is my favorite writer in all of fanfiction, and I will constantly rave about their work. I love their work so much, and so and in return, Apples has been a wonderful friend and has really inspired me and is always motivating me to move forward with my own work. And I cannot tell you how shell-shocked I was the first time that I got the email notification that told me that Apples was following my work, and I was just, I gave a little fanboy scream because they're an amazing writer, and to have a writer I respect and love and adore so much as a human being, and to have them, follow my writing,
Take pleasure out of your ride. Yeah.
And and then of course we've connected on Discord and we've become very good friends. Like, to me, like, yeah, apples all the way.
Great, fantastic. What would you say is your one thing that has influenced you as a person, be it a fanfic, a book, a movie, to the point where your life has changed completely? And why do you love that?
So for me, it was Star Wars. I grew up in the early 2000s, and so I watched the prequel trilogy first. I was a prequel baby.
Interesting.
Right? And so Star Wars opened me up to a love of fantasy and sci-fi. And I would not have my love of it now if it wasn't for Star Wars. It opened up a whole new universe to me. And I remember as a kid reading the Jedi Apprentice and Jedi Quest books. And that also drew me to a love of reading. And Star Wars inspired so much of my love of reading and writing and storytelling that would not be there if I hadn't watched, the first 6 movies as a kid. And I would be a very different person today. And one that I'm not sure I would like without Star Wars.
That's awesome. I love that. If you could give our listeners some advice about becoming writers, what would it be? What would be the best thing to focus on as a novice writer?
Oh goodness, that's a tough question.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure that there are a lot of people who would say, just start writing, just start storytelling, and while yes, that's all fine, well and good. I recommend this for anyone who's considering writing a story. Work on some grammar first. And
that usually helps.
Like, here's the thing. Your story idea could be great. But if I can't read what you're writing, I'm not going to read your story, and I'm not going to stick along. And so, I feel like, so yes, write and tell your stories, but while you're doing it, pay attention to how you're writing, because I can guarantee that there's going to be a lot of people who will drop a story just because they can't read your writing. Make sure you capitalize the letters properly.
Use Grammarly.
Yeah, use Grammarly, sure. And that probably sounds horrible and basic, but it's like one of the biggest flaws I see with new stories is grammar. And it's like, yes, they're a new writer, but this is a lot of the times it's basic stuff that shouldn't be missed.
Yep.
But just like a rough look over, That's another thing. Look over your stories. Right?
Reread them.
Read it before you post it, because, read, and here's what I always recommend. Whether you're writing a story or an essay or whatever, when you read over a story, say it out loud. How does it sound?
Yep.
Right?
That's a big one.
More often than not, you will catch a lot of errors that way.
For sure. That's one of the best advices possible, especially for dialogue. Like, if you can't say the sentence in one breath, then it's too long. Yep.
If it sounds weird coming out of your mouth, it has no place in your story.
So, what would you recommend as far as story?
Oh goodness, anything by Apple.
Sure. Figured that.
Their whole catalogs. Read it. It's good.
Which is amazingly big.
Apple is easily the best Star Wars fanfiction writer, and one of the best Harry Potter fanfiction writers. And in general, the best fanfiction writer there is, and no one can tell me different. But I guess for a specific story, it's not complete yet. But I will recommend Crashing into Darkness. It's by Septimus Prince. It's been an amazing story so far. I'm looking really forward to seeing where Septimus goes with it. Septimus is a good friend of mine, and so I'm not just typing their stuff, but
what is the story about?
Go ahead. So it's a Wrong Boy Who Lived kind of thing. Harry goes into Slytherin. It's supposed to be a Harry Astoria pairing, which is not one of those pairings that you find very often, and You guys know me. I'm a very picky pairing reader.
Mm-hmm.
I'm one of the most picky pairing readers ever.
I am as
Because
well.
I more often than not read a story for the romance than anything else.
Yep.
Yeah, romance is like the number one thing for me in a story. Is it done well? Who's it with? And so I'm very picky about pairings I read. And so Harry's story isn't one that I would typically like or enjoy, but I have faith in Septimus, and Septimus has done well so far. So I will recommend Crashing in the Darkness.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Phoenix, for chatting with us today, and thank you, listeners, for sticking around. Next time we will be interviewing Freckles, and I hope to see you all again. Keep reading and review an author you love. You could really make their day or even make a new friend.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.